In this lesson, we're going to talk about the HTML component. The HTML component allows you to integrate HTML content directly to your signage player presentation. The HTML component is a cross-operating system component. In other words, it's going to run just as well on your Android devices, on your iPads, on Windows and Mac. In fact, if you run the HTML component on mobile devices like iPad and Androids, the HTML component will use the native HTML widget within your tablet or mobile device. So everything will run natively and will use the hardware acceleration of that device. The HTML component is always compiled against the latest version of WebKit, and so it supports CSS, JavaScript, HTML5, and the latest technologies. Now, one more neat feature of the HTML component is that you can actually load it as a browser inside the Signage Studio as well and use it as sort of a backend HTML user editor. So I'll go ahead and talk about that as well. So in the Signage Studio, the first thing you want to do is switch to Components, scroll down and grab the HTML component, drag and drop it to a free channel, and double click to load up its properties. Now by default we see that it actually loads up dig, and we can go ahead and change that. So let's go ahead and put this URL over here and maybe put CNN and press enter, and you can see that it loads the page just as it should. And since this is a component, you can load it into a scene just like any other component. So let's go ahead and switch to our scene editor. Go ahead and make a little bit more room here. Again, switch to components, select the HTML component, drag and drop it, and just like any other component, you can drag and drop it and position it anywhere you'd like within the scene. Again, let's select our HTML component. This time, instead of double clicking on it to select it, we'll actually click on this icon to load up its properties. Make a little bit more room here. And now let's switch to definitions. And under definitions, you can set this to be an interactive component. And if you do, you will be able to have your users interact with an HTML component and navigate to web pages and basically use this as a browser inside the Signage player. So again, once I've selected the interactive mode, I can go ahead and browse the HTML pages just like I would with any other browser. Just scroll down and look at the content. And also don't forget that if you want to enable interactive mode at the component level, you also have to do it at the campaign level. So just switch to campaigns, select the campaign, and under kiosk, enable that as well. One more thing I wanted to talk about is the embedded HTML component that's built right onto the Signage Studio. Now what's cool about this built-in browser is that if you have any sort of content management system, you don't have to open an external browser. You can simply use the built-in browser in the studio and configure the data directly from there. So let's go ahead and talk about that. Again, click on the HTML component to load up its properties. And you'll notice right here that we have this configuration URL. So let's go ahead and make a little more room here. So first I'll go ahead and paste in an address of a component I developed, and this component will display 3 different clocks for 3 different time zones. So go ahead and paste in the address, press on enter, and you can go ahead and use the same sample application to try it on your end. Just make sure that you keep the same case for the URL since it is case sensitive. And next, for the configuration, I'll go ahead and load another URL. This will be the backend configurator, so it will actually allow us to configure the different clocks that we want to display. And you'll notice that as soon as I paste in the address, I'm presented with an HTML component right here that's built directly onto the Signage Studio. So I'm able to configure the different settings right from over here and control my player component that's going to run over here inside the HTML browser. And so what this allows me to do is be able to control my content without having to open an external browser and do it all directly from the Signage Studio. Now let's go ahead and select a few different clocks over here. So the aqua blue and a different time offset for the first one. And go ahead and apply the changes. And the HTML component runs my new content just as soon as I've applied my changes. And so the HTML component is a simple tool that allows you to both embed HTML content directly in your presentation in the Signage player as well as in the Signage Studio. Also, if you're a developer, you can develop your own custom components in HTML, in HTML5, in JavaScript, and use that in your presentation as well. One side note is that we also support HTML cropping if you wanted to crop only sections of a particular HTML page, and I recommend you visit the tips and tricks section of the video tutorial for more information on that. So thank you for watching, and let us know if you have any questions.